Hi, English 111 students. Welcome to Module 5. I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking a little bit about some of the aspects of Module 5 that you'll be working on. This module is focused entirely on doing academic research. The remaining essays in the class are going to ask you to use academic research to help back up the points that you're making. So everything we've talked about up to this point about essay structure and essay organization, all that stays the same. You're going to still use those techniques, like about how to write your intro paragraph and that sort of deal. It's just now we're going to start adding in the research element. This is important for several reasons. First of all, if you plan on transferring to a university, or if you have to take another English class, even just if you're here, you will be asked to write research. And so you'll be asked to write research papers, research essays. Many other classes, not just English classes, are going to also ask you to write researched essays. And then if you do transfer, or you at some point decide to pursue a bachelor's degree or even higher, then you'll definitely be doing much more research. So this is a good way to start thinking about research on an academic level. Now, on some level, we all do research like all the time. Anytime you do a Google search for anything, you're technically doing research, but you're not doing academic research. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about exactly what it is that makes academic research academic. Probably the easiest way to think about it is that academic research uses specific kinds of sources. So not just something you can find in a Google search. There's a phrase I like to use that helps kind of narrow this down. Academic sources are those that are written by experts for other experts. So that means a source has to meet those criteria to really call it academic. So first of all, it's written by experts. So experts within whatever field it is that you're reading or researching. So if I were doing a research paper in a psychology class, I would want to make sure that I'm looking at sources that are written by experts in the field of psychology. So folks who have advanced degrees in that field, folks who have been published, folks who are professors, folks who are doing research of their own. So that's the first half. It's written by experts. The second half of that phrase is that these are sources that are written for other experts. This means that they're published in very specific places. They're not just published randomly on the internet. They're published in professional academic journals. So the kinds of sources that you'll be looking at aren't necessarily found through just a regular Google search. You can find academic sources through Google Scholar, which is a particular kind of Google search. However, many times you often run into a paywall, meaning that you can see part of the article, but you have to pay in order to see the entire thing. So this is where our library comes in really handy. There is a video further down in the module that walks through some research techniques and how to use the online databases through our library through MySCC. So you log into, MySCC just like you do to get here to Moodle. It's just instead of clicking on Moodle, you click on the library tab. Our library then offers you hundreds of databases that you can research. And those databases are filled with all kinds of sources. Some of them are scholarly, some of them are not. Some of them are things like dictionaries and encyclopedias. Those are not considered scholarly because they're written for just a general audience. They're not written for experts. So remember that phrase. It is written by an expert or experts for other experts. Every type of source that you use, if you are asked to use a scholarly or academic source, needs to meet both of those criteria, written by experts for experts. So a source can be absolutely accurate, right? It can have fantastic information. It can be absolutely correct, but still not be academic if it doesn't meet that criteria. So I might, for example, read on a website from the CDC about diabetes. It might be perfectly good information. It might be highly accurate. It might even have quotes from experts, but it's still not considered scholarly if it wasn't written by experts for other experts. If it's just a general website that's been written for the general public, that's not scholarly. It might be accurate, but not scholarly. So I want you to start kind of playing with the difference between those. The essays remaining in the course will ask you to use a minimum number of scholarly sources. Once you have those, you're free to use other types of sources as well. But I want you to start practicing using the databases, playing around with your search terms, which is something you'll do in this module, and then really thinking about how those scholarly sources add that expert piece to the research that you're writing. The other piece of writing academic research is then writing it. So finding the sources and using the sources, that's one thing. Then actually writing the essay is something else. So I wanted to make sure to emphasize the reading that you have for this module in your handbook, a writer's reference. So you'll notice in the middle tabs, so right here kind of in the middle, you've got a tab that's for MLA. That's the one we're using. But then there's another tab right after it that is APA and CMS. Those are two other research styles. APA is the American Psychological Association. You may end up using it in other classes here. The other one, CMS, is the Chicago Manual of Style. So APA gets used in, obviously, psychology, because it's the American Psychological Association. But it also gets used in a lot of our science classes. I know our nursing program uses APA. CMS is a research style that's used in a lot of history courses or history kinds of courses. So these three, MLA, APA, and CMS, are considered like the big three, because out of all the research styles, and there are dozens, out of all of them, these three get used the most often on college campuses. So that's why they're in your textbook. So if you turn to the MLA tab, you have reading in this section for this module. So make sure that you pay attention to the reading for this module, because you will be expected to use MLA format for your research. When we talk about MLA format for research, I'm basically talking about two things. Well, technically three, but you're already doing one of them. One is the format of the paper. So you're already doing that. So for the research element, there are two things. One is citations. So that is in the essay itself. How do you tell me where your information came from? Those are citations. Then the other piece, the second piece, is at the end of the essay. How do you list all of the sources that you used? In MLA, that's called a works cited list, because these are the works that are cited in the essay. So first of all, citations. This is in the essay itself. So if I quote from a source, or if even I just refer to a source, I need to put a citation at the end of that sentence saying where it came from. MLA uses parentheses, and inside those parentheses, you put the author's last name or authors and the page number where that information came from. Those are citations. They're called parenthetical citations because they use parentheses. At the end of the essay, you list all of your sources in a very specific format that shows the reader, so me, where these sources came from. So it tells me the author's name, the title, the publication information, the year it was published, and if you found it online, it gives me a URL or a DOI, either one. What I want to emphasize is that both of those things, citations and your works cited, are mentioned and talked about in detail in your text. So this is where, especially as being an online student, that it's really important you depend upon your textbook. So if you open the MLA section, this very first page, and actually the backside of it, so these very first two pages are very, very important for citations and works cited. So you'll notice at the top, this top box is a directory of models for in-text citations. And then the bottom box, which continues on to the next page, is a list of models for works cited. So let's say I find an article in one of the databases. it's an article, it's been published in a journal, let's say like the Journal of Psychiatry, or whatever, and I want to use that in my essay. I want to do two things. I want to find out how do I do my citation in the essay itself, which is this top box. And then the second is how do I list that source on my works cited page, which is this second box. So the top box is going to show me what to do if there's one author, what to do if there's 4 authors, like do I put all of them in the parentheses in that citation? What if there's no author mentioned at all? So I want to make sure that I use this to look up the examples for that kind of source. Then when I'm ready to list it on the works cited page, there are options down here for all kinds of different sources. So an article from a journal found in a database, if you want to follow along, it's on this column, so the directory of examples. If you go over here, this is articles and other works. Scroll on down to number 14, article in a journal, and then it's got options, print, online, or database. Well, yours are found in databases. I just told you that. So it says on page 403. So I would flip to page 403, look at the example they give me, and make sure mine looks exactly like that. So if you quote from a movie, I think it's on the next page. Yeah, number 45, film. So what do you do if you quote from a movie? How do you list that on your works cited page? There's no publisher. No, but there's a production company. So number 45, I would flip to that page, which is 415, and it follow that example. So make sure that you're being very aware of how to use your handbook for writing your research and doing the legwork of really finding out how to, number 1, get academic sources, and then number 2, how to use them in your essay. I want to also encourage you to look at the link here in module that is labeled sample/model assignments. I've put 2 different samples in there. One is a complete research paper from a literature class, but that doesn't matter, so that you can see the format. And then another, I've just put a works cited page. Like, here's what works cited looks like in MLA, so that you've got some idea of what this is supposed to ultimately look like before you turn in a research essay. So for this module, you're going to be playing with all of that. You're going to be playing around with how to find these sources in the databases, how to use search terms to find specific kinds of sources, and then how to use MLA format once you do find those sources. All right, I look forward to seeing what you search about and what you post about in this module, and we'll start using academic research from here on out for the essays in our class. Thanks. Have a good couple of weeks.